They've helped educate more than 700,000 Catholics over their 175 years, and they continue to educate us in many ways outside the classroom where we first encountered them. The cover shot of my book is from 1945, when the sisters had to wait in silence before entering the Mother House dining hall. And it was a rare time when they were allowed to be photographed during a look inside the convent for the congregation's 100th anniversary. Our next slide. So I just want to tell you how to order the IHM book so it benefits the IHMs. In non-pandemic times, you could buy it at the Mother House gift shop, but that's closed because of COVID to keep the sisters safe. If you buy it from the IHMs through this link, the proceeds will benefit them and not Amazon or Barnes & Noble. And that link is bit.ly/IHM book, bit.ly/IHM book. The sisters will sell you the book and ship it to you for $20.99 plus sales tax. If you want to know more about me and the other books I've written, including my books on Detroit Jesu Catholic Church and School, where IHMs taught beginning in 1925, or about Blessed Solanus Casey, Michigan's miracle worker, please visit bit.ly/Detroit Catholic History. I was taught by IHM sisters at St. Thomas Aquinas School in Detroit. My husband, who is my assistant this evening because of his knowledge of Zoom meetings, was taught by IHMs at Detroit Jesu School, and his aunt was an IHM nun, Sister Alice Mary Deal. His mother was taught by IHMs, so was his father, and it's a professional and personal connection with me and the IHMs. They influenced me in many ways. Our next slide, I'm going to tell you about how the IHMs became a fixture in Michigan. The IHMs were founded in 1845 when Sister Teresa Maxis Duchemin arrived in Monroe from Baltimore. She's pictured here at your far left. She was born out of wedlock as Marie Almeida Maxis Duchemin. Her mother was a Haitian refugee of mixed race heritage who worked for a well-to-do Haitian family in Baltimore. Her father was a British military officer and a Duchemin family friend. At age 19, she joined the world's first religious order for women of color, the Oblate Sisters of Providence of Baltimore. That's where she met Father Louis Gillet, a Belgian-born Redemptorist priest who wanted to open a school for the French-Canadian settlers in Monroe. The congregation originally was called the Sisters of Providence and then changed to Sisters Servants of the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Father Gillet recruited Teresa Maxis in part because she was proficient in French and English, and she was light-skinned and blue-eyed, so she could pass for white when she came to Monroe. Father Gillet's motto was, "I desire to be everywhere when I see so many needs." And that statement has rooted the IHM's mission even through to today. Father Gillet had traveled across southeastern Michigan, visiting fledgling parishes in the area, among them St. Paul on the Lake in Grosse Pointe, east of Detroit. That's where he met the woman you see on the far right, born Teresa Renault, and whose parents donated the land for St. Paul's first church. She heard Father Gillet preach at the church and became one of the first women to join the new congregation, where she was known as Sister Celestine. What you see here, actually the congregation's first home was a log cabin on the banks of the River Raisin, and a small house nearby became its first school, the Young Ladies Academy. In 1846, it enrolled 40 students, and it was the forerunner to what became known as St. Mary Academy. What you see here was part of the IHM convent in the mid-1850s until 1869. The building later served as the school for the Monroe St. Mary Parish until 1910. This photo, believed to date to the 1880s, gives a view of the IHM campus on the north bank of the River Raisin. So in a few decades, it's grown extensively with the addition of a sizable convent, a building built in 1881 for St. Mary Academy, and an orphanage the IHMs operated from 1866 to 1895. And if you look in the upper right corner, you can see St. Mary's Church in the background. And this gives you a very good idea of how the whole complex just hugged the River Raisin. Okay. This is what St. Mary Academy, looked like in June 1910. That's when President William Howard Taft visited Monroe and addressed St. Mary Academy students. Taft was in Monroe for the unveiling of the statue commemorating General George Armstrong Custer, which exists today on a downtown corner right across the street from St. Mary Parish Church, and not far from the new IHM Mother House, or the current IHM Mother House. I love this photo. When I saw this photo, I just found it so unexpected and delightful. Down at the bottom, you see auto pioneer Henry Ford with his wife Clara. They were raised Episcopalians, but they were big benefactors to the IHMs. When the Fords celebrated their 40th wedding anniversary, they were feted at an April 11th, 1929 reception at St. Mary Academy, pictured here. St. Mary students staged a folk dance festival for the Fords, who had enjoyed folk dancing and clogging with friends at their Fairlane estate in Dearborn. Henry Ford knew about the IHMs because of his days as a bicycle shop owner in Detroit. His shop was near a hardware store owned by the family known as Raymo, R-A-Y-M-O, and the youngster often behind the hardware store counter became IHM sister Miriam Raymo. Every year, Ford would donate a car to the IHMs because of Sister Miriam Raymo. And Sister Miriam Raymo she's credited with helping avert a 1934 Monroe bank collapse. She and several other IHMs stood in long lines at the bank and deposited a quarter at a time. Then they got back in line to talk to as many people as possible to build confidence that the bank couldn't fail, and it didn't. So the IHMs were good with managing money from years and years back. Sadly, fire destroyed St. Mary Academy in June 1929, and it's a pretty dramatic photo, but gladly no one was hurt in this calamity. So here we are on the brink of the Depression, and the IHMs have lost the school where they educate hundreds of students, hundreds of young women. And so what do? They have to figure out how they're going to build a new school. By 1931, this was the groundbreaking for the new school, and it's the building that still stands today on Elm Street in Monroe. Replacing St. Mary Academy was a formidable challenge. The congregation of 737 sisters at the time borrowed $3.5 million to build the new school, which sadly stands empty today. The debt was paid off in 1976 when the congregation numbered 1,174 sisters. And this is just a delightful photo, though, of its time that really talks about, you really get the sense of the flapper era and the dress of the 1920s in this photo. This is what they built during the Depression. This was the new St. Mary Academy, the one you're familiar with on Elm Street, under construction. The new building opened in 1932 with an enrollment of 340 girls in 12 grades, and many of them boarded there. The majority boarded there. Some famous people have lived there and gone to school at St. Mary Academy, including Valerie Harper, the Catholic-bred actress who played Jewish Rhoda Morgenstern on the Mary Tyler TV show and on the Rhoda TV show. But her father was a bit of a traveling executive, and she stayed at, she went to St. Mary Academy when she was in just 4th and 5th grade, I think, maybe just 4th grade. And about 15, 20 years ago, she came back to Monroe, and she visited some of the sisters who taught her when she was in 4th grade. Okay, here's the IHM campus when it was completed with the mother house, the new mother house, and St. Mary Academy. So they've left that whole site you saw down by the river, and now they've moved a little bit further west and a little away from the river, but still from those top windows, you have a good river view. The campus was designed by architect August C. Bolin and Son. The Monroe Evening News described it as a collection of masterpieces and a remarkable achievement in finance, planning, and construction. The center, if you can look at the in the middle between the two massive buildings, is marked by an 11-ton statue of Mary carved from Italian Carrara marble. This gives you a sense of the size of the congregation, how it was growing. This is a procession of IHM circa, I believe, 1939. In the front, you see the IHM postulants. Those are the young women, generally just out of high school, who are entering the convent, who are entering the mother house, and we're in their first year, and we're trying to decide, is this the life for me? Do I want to be a sister? Do I want to commit myself to this life? Today, postulants are called candidates, but they had a uniform, but they weren't wearing the veil fully or anything like that. That would come down the road if they decided to move on, and that's when they would become novices. Now you see the novices here. These are women who are in their 2nd and 3rd year of study with the congregation. They wear white veils. And then behind them are the professed sisters, the sisters who have taken formal vows to become and permanent vows to become an IHM sister. And they would wear the black habits. And you can't tell in these black and white photos, but one of the reasons they earned the nickname Blue Nuns is because they used to wear these royal blue habits. Okay, and habits derived from the common dress of the European Middle Ages. That's where much of the habits we've come to associate with nuns of previous generations and some congregations today. That was all derived from how women dressed in the Middle Ages. Here's another view of the IHM Mother House from the back of the building, and you see a lot of the sisters assembled here. It gives you a sense of how massive this building was, and it also tells, this was a unique arrangement for them all to be out in the field like this. This photo might have come from the centennial year of 1945. Much of the IHM sisters' lives up through the mid-1960s at the Mother House and before the reforms of the Second Vatican Council in the 1960s, much of their day was spent in silence. Postulants couldn't talk to novices unless they were in a class together, for example. Conversations couldn't go on during meal times, except for maybe Saturdays or an occasional Sunday. Even during recreation times, conversation was limited to certain places and prohibited in the dormitory, prohibited in corridors, or even on the street. So imagine that. There was a grand ceremony known as the reception ceremony when a postulant became an IHM novice. And this photo is from 1946. So remember, the postulant, she's been in the congregation now for 1 year. She's decided she wants to pursue this life, this calling. And in the annual ceremony that usually was in June, she started the day wearing bridal white and would end the day veiled in a nun's habit. Postulants wore identical white satin gowns for the ceremony. In earlier years, IHMs actually wore bridal gowns. The white gown was a symbol of a sister pledging her life to the Lord as a bride takes a groom. This is a really dramatic part of the ceremony. You'll see it during ordinations for priests, and you also see it in ceremonies for religious women. During the reception ceremony, the IHM novices and postulants lie prostrate on the cold marble floor in front of the main altar in the IHM Mother House Chapel. This is done to demonstrate meekness and humility in becoming a servant of God. And here's a photo of postulants from 1962. So at this point, they're not wearing the white dresses anymore. And in 1962, we're just on the verge of a lot of life changing for religious sisters across the US and the world. But these women are about to become novices, and they're carrying with them their habits, and you see the white veil of their, you see the white veil on top of their, when they end this ceremony, they're going to be dressed in those floor-length habits, and their entire head is going to be covered with a white veil. They're also going to get new names. They carry their new habits with them to change into, as we see here. Okay. All right, so this is another ceremony in the early 60s. And it's, you see the gentleman at this, that's Cardinal John Dearden, who was a longtime Archbishop and Cardinal of Detroit up through much of the 60s and the 70s. When an IHM became a novice, she was given a new name to signify a separate identity in religious life. The woman herself could make 3 suggestions, but her superiors made the pick. Sometimes a woman suggested the name of a favorite Catholic saint or a name that honored a parent, such as Sister Mary Clifford. Occasionally, superiors gave the sister her own name as her religious name. All of that would change down the road in the late 60s with the reforms of the Second Vatican Council, when sisters were allowed to return to their birth names if they chose, or to keep their religious names. Some 140 families have watched 2 or more siblings become IHM sisters. And this was just remarkable to me when I was doing the research. Just to, there were photos of, you know, pairs of sisters, and there were photos of 3 sets, you know, 3 sisters who became IHMs. But the championship trophy goes to the Sullivan family of Detroit. The Sullivans, I believe, had 11 children. 5 daughters went to Monroe between the years of 1932 and 1943 to study to become IHMs. They were sisters Genevieve, Angela, Margaret, Marie Sylvia, and Janet. Of all those sisters, one of them is still with us, Sister Janet, who is in her 76th year as an IHM. 2 of her sisters only passed in the last few years. Sister Genevieve, who was known as Sister Mary Clifford, and she picked Clifford to honor the gentleman sitting in the middle there. That's their father, Clifford. She celebrated her 78th year as an IHM in 2020, and she died 2 months ago at age 98. Sister Margaret Sullivan, known as Sister Malachi, died in 2018 at the age of 101. So this is just a remarkable, you know, accomplishment and piece of history from any family, and especially for the IHMs. The IHMs operated St. Mary Farm from 1920 to 1976. It covered 1,100 acres of farmland split between the mother house and plots about 6 miles away. The IHMs raised crops, poultry, sheep, and dairy, and beef cattle, and they tended to fruit orchards. Many IHMs had grown up on farms in Michigan and the Midwest, so they were used to working hard. They just weren't used to working hard in floor-length habits, heavy veils, and but they wore an apron. They had an apron to wear over their habits, and you can see them just getting into the truck. And there's photos in the books of them going out milking cows and picking eggs, and you name it, they did it. And they did it and they were doing that through some of the sisters today who entered the congregation in the 1960s remember doing this kind of work and can tell you how hard and how hot it was. It was they especially had to work the fields during World War II because so many hired farmhands were in the service. St. Mary Farm produced enough milk, meat, produce, and fruit to feed the Mother House and St. Mary Academy. Often, there was enough to send to many convents around Detroit where IHM nuns lived while teaching in Catholic schools. And this is just a lovely photo of, 3 IHM sisters in full habits tending to sheep on a farm not far from the Mother House. So times have changed in so many ways, and this is one way in which it's changed. They're not working out in the fields, but there are IHMs who are real champions of organic gardening behind in plots behind the Mother House. And we'll talk later about how they are just champions for the earth even today. When I was a kid, it would have surprised me to see my IHM teachers as ping pong players and pool players. But here's just a few shots proving the sisters could enjoy themselves as we did. And there's other examples of this in my book. And there's just so many wonderful photos that I couldn't even use in the book. I mean, I'm limited by how many photos. There's 200 plus, but it's just stunning to me, the treasures of history that are in the IHM's archives. Okay. Here's a harmonious assembly. The choirs of the IHM Postulants, the Novices, and professed sisters joining together for a concert in the early 1960s. It was a time when the IHMs were at their peak with about 1,600 members. And I believe this was in the auditorium at St. Mary Academy. And that auditorium, coincidentally, was designed by my father-in-law, Jerry Deal of Deal and Deal Architects. And my husband is the descendant of a family of architects who designed many churches in the Detroit area and elsewhere. Many of you, like myself and many of my friends, came to know the IHMs first when they were in front of a classroom blackboard. This scene is from I believe it's from St. John the Baptist School in Monroe. The IHMs were the predominant teaching order in the Archdiocese of Detroit. They staffed some of the largest schools in the Detroit area. I'm talking about St. Mary of Redford and Holy Redeemer and Our Lady of Good Counsel on the east side, and St. Raymond's on the east side of Detroit, and through Detroit and elsewhere in Michigan and across the country. Other big teaching orders in the city and vicinity were the Adrian Dominicans and the Sisters of St. Joseph and the Felicians, but the IHMs were really the biggest contributors to Catholic education in Metro Detroit during the heyday of Catholic schools. One of the oldest IHM sponsored and IHM built buildings in Monroe is the old Hall of the Divine Child, just west of the Mother House on Elm Street. It was built in 1918. It was a military-style boarding school for boys. Here's a school band. One of its youthful boarders was the late U.S. Representative John Dingell, Jr., And what was fun when I was doing research on at the IHM archives was to see one of the music teachers at the Hall of the Divine Child had kept very, very detailed notes about which students were playing what instrument in what grade and how often she would see them and how their progress was going. But it's just one more facet of the IHM's rich contributions to the area. In the summer, when school wasn't in session for the boys who lived there, many of the IHM sisters who had been in convents around Detroit and the state and elsewhere teaching, they came home to Monroe for the summer, and sisters would board here at the Hall of the Divine Child when there wasn't room for them in the mother house. And that building, I don't remember if I mentioned it, it is now a senior residence, the 109 unit senior residence called Norman Towers. This photo is from St. George Catholic School in Detroit when it was closing circa 1965, and it was bulldozed to make way for the I-75 Chrysler Freeway. The school initially enrolled many children of Lithuanian immigrants, and the IHM served there when the school served many African-American students. In this photo, you see Sister Louise, also known as Rosemary Allah, and Sister Mary Allen, also known as Sister Catherine Cavatayo, are pictured here. They were handling books that we believe were headed to St. Regis School in Birmingham, since the school was closing. One of the first Detroit schools staffed by IHMs was called St. Augustine to provide schooling for Black children. It operated just 3 years from 1867 to 1870, and it was sponsored at the time by St. Anne, historic St. Anne's Parish in Detroit. Monroe IHMs taught in several states, including Florida, New Mexico, Alabama, Ohio, and Illinois. Sister Bridget Mary Wade, here on the right, helped tend to goats while teaching at Our Lady of Miracles in Gustine, Florida from 1963 to 1965. The school had students who hailed from the Azore Islands, which are off the coast of Portugal in the Atlantic Ocean. Heifer International provided goats for the students to raise, and Sister Bridget Mary Wade helped them raise those goats, and those goats were later shipped to needy families in the Azores. Because this is a color photo, this is maybe the first time we're seeing that royal blue habit that so many baby boomer Catholics associated with the IHMs. And Sister Bridget Mary Wade is very active at the Mother House. Today, she helps lead programs for the environment, and she's also a IT technical whiz also. Honest to God, I could write a book. I could write a chapter on probably every IHM sister, and I could write a book on some of them, and I could write a book on all the schools they opened and operated. They're just incredible, incredible women. One of those incredible women was Sister Ambrosia Fitzgerald. She was one of the first women to earn a doctorate in physics from the University of Michigan. This was her student ID card in 1932, 1933. She was staying at it gives her home address of St. Mary Convent in Monroe. But she got her degree from the doctorate in physics from the University of Michigan. But she was also a high school math teacher. So she could have been a math teacher at Marygrove College or St. Mary Academy or Detroit St. Mary of Redford, St. Gregory, Immaculata High, and Holy Redeemer high schools. So she might have been your teacher, but on weekends during World War II, she was secretly traveling to Chicago because she had a mind for math, and she was used as kind of a human math computer to work on the Manhattan Project. Manhattan Project led to the development of the atomic bomb that ended World War II. So just astounding. It was mind-blowing to me when I learned that. And there's so many amazing IHMs, and I'm just telling you about a few. I wish I could tell you about all of them. The woman you see here on the left is Sister Catherine Frances Malin, who died in 1970. After a breast cancer diagnosis, she allowed her tumors to be used in experiments. Doctors at the Michigan Cancer Foundation, now known as Karmanos Cancer Center, marveled at how her cancer cells multiplied exponentially. Her cell line became known as MCF7, and it reproduced so well, it was dubbed immortal. It is the most studied breast cancer cell line in the world and has led to breakthroughs in cancer treatment. And it all started with an IHM nun. On the right is Sister Mary Emile Panay. She was president of Mary Grove College in Detroit from 1961 to 1968. She helped develop the Sister Formation Conference in the 1950s, which was designed to ensure Catholic sisters received college educations before becoming classroom teachers and to be allowed to pursue graduate degrees in their specialties. Now, Catholic bishops and parish pastors weren't too keen on this idea initially because it meant the nuns would be away at colleges getting degrees instead of staffing Catholic school classrooms for little pay. Because of these teachers being away, it meant parishes might have to hire lay teachers. And lay teachers, they would have to pay more than what they were paying the sisters. And here's how much they were paying the sisters. Here's one example. In the 1950s, the Archdiocese of Detroit paid only $40 a month to a teaching sister. And that went up to $70 a month in 1956. Sister Emile and other sisters persevered to make sure Catholic sisters were at their best and most educated in the classroom. Father Louis Gillet's missionary work inspired many IHMs to do his work overseas in many countries. In 1948, the IHMs dispatched several sisters to open a mission in Calle, Puerto Rico. In the 1960s, Cardinal Dearden asked the IHMs to provide sisters for a mission evangelization team to the Amazon area of Northeast Brazil. Since 1969, the IHMs have worked with the disadvantaged in Ghana, South Africa, Kenya, Uganda, and Zimbabwe. And here in December 2000, several IHMs met in Uganda at the equator. And the S and the N you see here at the bottom of that monument, that doesn't stand for sisters or nuns. It stands for Southern Hemisphere or Northern Hemisphere. And the sister right here in the middle, Sister Sue Ricozi, she's continues to be a teacher in South Africa to this day. And she was a religion teacher at my old high school, Rosary High School in Detroit, which was actually founded by Adrian Dominicans, but Sister Sue taught religion there. And it was my pleasure to see her again while I was preparing this book last year. In February 1986, in a South African township, several IHM sisters from Monroe were working at a local parish. The parish leaders gave the nuns a gift, a lamb. You see the lamb here? You know what the lamb's name was? Monroe. They named it Monroe to honor Monroe, Michigan, and Monroe was later served for Easter dinner. IHM sisters in South Africa also were volunteer election monitors the first time South Africa held free elections in 1994 after the end of apartheid. In those free elections, any citizen, regardless of race, could vote. And the sisters helped make sure things went smoothly at the polls that day. IHMs are in action, whether they are oceans away or on the streets here in Monroe, Detroit, or Washington, D.C., and they're often marching to make a difference. You've seen them marching here in Monroe, praying for peace or to provide relief for an injustice. Most recently, they've taken actions against the crackdown on bringing refugees and asylum seekers to the United States. In this march, they were protesting for peace in Washington, D.C. in the 1980s. It really showcases the shift in how sisters dressed, in how more and more sisters took advantage of common clothing as they're in giving up the habits. You know, that debate continues whether the sisters should wear habits or whether they should wear street clothes. There are advantages and disadvantages to both. Most IHMs today wear conventional clothing. Okay, I could do an entire presentation on the IHM's commitment to the environment and teaching us how to live green. The IHMs will do it for you. Once the pandemic is over, they'll give you tours on all their environmental and ecologically sound efforts at the Mother House. From about 2004 through 2019, nearly 16,000 people, ranging from architects to university environmental science majors to garden clubs, have toured the massive IHM Mother House. They've marveled at the renovation of the IHM Mother House, and they come to learn how the 376,000 square foot facility is warmed and cooled by a geothermal heating system, and how water used for dishwashing and laundry is recycled to refill toilets, among other earth-friendly initiatives. The sisters have become eco-justice innovators. The $56 million renovation of their massive Mother House and 200-acre campus occurred from 2001 to 2003. It was redesigned to take better care of aging sisters, once assigned to dormitory-style rooms with communal bathrooms. So during this time, the IHMs, during the renovation, they moved out of the Mother House and they moved into St. Mary Academy, which had become vacant because the school closed because of declining enrollment. So they had to totally move themselves out of where they were used to living. When it cost about $150 per square foot for the modernization. How did they pay for it? When IHMs gathered to brainstorm about how to pay for it, they broke into about 15-member groups. When one group just emptied their pockets with cash on hand, they collected $150. And one sister yelled, "Here's the first square foot." So that prompted alumni and donors to make $150 donations. So when you go on this tour, visitors are just awestruck that nuns, that sisters, that religious women helped undertake this massive renovation that's become a model for organizations across the US. And here you see some of the renovation inside, and these were the members of the Leadership Council who were wearing hard hats when the work began in the early 2000s. Okay, many of the folks in this photo, including a male and a young mother of two, are members of the IHM community, but they aren't sisters. Why is that? Well, you can become an IHM too, an IHM associate, that is. IHM associates are folks who make a commitment to share in the life and ministry of the IHM community. Under a framework of spiritual guidance, associates align themselves with the IHM spirit, mission, and values. Associates are men or women, single or married, and even of various faith backgrounds, but who share the congregation's mission. You're paired with an IHM sister for a period of learning and discussion about the IHMs. It doesn't mean you move in with them or come to be addressed as Sister John Doe. On the far right, Sarah Nash here is with her family. She's the coordinator of the IHM Justice, Peace, and Sustainability Office and became an IHM associate in 2019. On the far left, wearing a blue blazer is my longtime friend and retired Detroit Free Press reporter, Patricia, a Marygrove College graduate who became an IHM associate in January 2020. In the middle photo is IHM associate Sharon Carolyn, a one-time IHM sister, and Chuck Van Vliet, both IHM associates. The associates movement began in 1977 to foster ties between IHM sisters and those who had left the congregation. It has become so much more and a great way to become involved with these wonderful women and their wonderful work. So right here, you see Sister Sharon Holland. For 21 years, Sister Sharon Holland was one of the highest ranking women to work at the Vatican. She is an expert in church law. She's a canon lawyer, and she's an expert in church law regarding priests, nuns, and sisters. She is known worldwide by the folks who lead Catholic congregations of priests and nuns and sisters. And as president of the Leadership Council, the Leadership Conference of Women Religious, which is one of the major organizations representing a majority of American sisters and nuns in the US, she was key in resolving bitter disputes between the Vatican and American sisters. She helped negotiate the end of Vatican investigations into American sisters, which were initiated under Pope Benedict XVI and resolved under Pope Francis into US Congregations of Sisters and the Leadership Conference of Women Religious. The investigations into American sisters were initiated in part because some bishops believed US Congregations of Women Religious, such as the IHMs, had become too liberal in their support of social justice issues. So you see her meeting here with Pope Francis, and she received one of the top Vatican honors that the Vatican bestows on its servants. And when I say servants, I mean it's the folks who have served the church so well. She's here in Monroe now. Here on the left, we have Sister Lynn Moldenauer. Sister Lynn just took her final vows as an IHM earlier this month. For many years, she worked in the South Carolina prison system as a officer dealing with parolees and probation. She now helps run a retreat house known as IHM Maxis Spirituality Center in Riverview. On your right, you see Sister Beth Wood, once known as Sister Marie Alma. She was 90 when I took this photo last year. It was just a few weeks after she completed the Detroit Free Press Half Marathon. So she ran 13 some miles when she was 90 years old. She was the last person to cross the line, but she crossed that line. And for much of her 80s, she completed at least one full marathon each year. And we're coming near the end here. What you see here is Sister Angela Therese Merrim. She's banging the drum for the start of the Jubilee Mass in the Mother House Chapel in July 2019. Every year, the IHMs have Jubilee, which is when they celebrate IHM's milestone anniversaries. It's a highlight of the year for the IHMs, and it brings many visitors to the Mother House to celebrate IHMs with 25 years, 50 years, all the way up to 80 years of service as an IHM. Flanking Sister Angela is Sister Mary Lynn Russ on the left and Sister Patricia Nagel on the right. Sister Angela helps coordinate an IHM ministry which supplies communion bread to parishes in Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, New York, and Kentucky. These faces represent the women who call themselves IHMs today. Their ministries offer a sample of what IHMs do and who they serve. Sister Sandrita Pupart Valentin, right here in the front, was taught by IHMs in her native Puerto Rico, and that's where she has taught elementary and special ed students. Next to her is Sister Maria Antonia Aranda Diaz, who ministers in Juarez, Mexico, helping folks who struggle at the US border. Sisters Julie Vieira, second from right, and Sister Maxine Kolash, fourth from right, co-founded A Nun's Life Ministry, an online outreach that features podcasts and interviews and forums on religious life. Sister Audra Turnbull, far right, and Sister Jane Azeltine, third from right, are among the newest and youngest women to become IHMs. On August 4th, 2019, Jane Azeltine, then 34, took vows to become an IHM at the Mother House Chapel. She was accompanied by her great aunt, Sister Patricia Azeltine. A community of, and it's a beautiful, beautiful mass when a sister professes her vows. And here Sister Jane and the community extends its arms in a blessing to her. Sister Jane studied at the Catholic Theological Union in Chicago during the past year. And in a side note, the first woman religious to ever lead the Catholic Theological Union will be a Michigan-bred Grand Rapids Dominican, Sister Barbara Reed, starting on January 1st. And Sister Barbara's sister was one of my classmates. Let's just go here. I want to tell you about this. The IHMs are transforming a wing of the Mother House into a senior living complex that is open to the public. So you don't have to be a sister to know the beauty, tranquility, and comfort of a room with a view at the Mother House. In 2019, an initial 19 units were available for purchase. Floor plans include 1 and 2 bedroom units with balconies ranging from about $83,000 to $147,000. 9 units have been sold. They were singing happy birthday and eating cake on November 10th, 2019, when the IHMs marked the start of their 175th anniversary year. Cutting the cake is the current IHM president, Sister Mary Jane Erb. She is now in line to become the 5th IHM sister to serve as the president of the Leadership Council of Women Religious, that organization which represents the majority of U.S. sisters and nuns. It's another way the IHMs seek to fulfill their mission statement. They have been leaders, they have been feminists before there was a word for it, and they are remarkable, remarkable women. This is one of their missions. This is their mission statement. Their mission statement today: urged by the love of God, we choose to work with others to build a culture of peace and right relationship among ourselves, with the church, and with the whole earth community. So happy birthday to the IHMs. That brings us to the end of my presentation. There are about 250 IHMs now. Most of them are in their 70s and 80s. The community faces incredible challenges in the years to come. About 50% of the IHMs live at the Mother House, and they need help. They rely on donations and the contributions of members who still work to make the place comfortable and to take care of these women who nurtured so many of us. You should know that their facilities are top notch. And like I said, I wish I could write something about every one of them. I'm going to tell you that tomorrow night, if you watch the PBS NewsHour, you're going to be able to hear about the life of one more IHM sister, Sister Beverly Hinson. She was a chaplain for many, many, many years at Children's Hospital of Michigan in Detroit. She passed away a few weeks ago of COVID. She is going to be remembered tomorrow as part of the PBS broadcast, the PBS NewsHour broadcast. I'm going to take your questions now, and here's just a little bit more. If you want to learn more about the IHM Sisters, visit ihmsisters.org. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patricia. If you'd like to ask Patricia a question, please feel free to raise your hand in the participant panel, and I will call on you and unmute you. Rosalie, please ask your question. Oh, Rosalie,
Rosalie, if you could unmute for us, that would be great, so you can answer your question.
if you click next to your name in the participant panel, there you go. Go ahead. Rosalie, we can't hear you. Rosalie, I'm gonna just put you on mute for a second and take another question, see if I can figure out what's going on. Rosaline, please go ahead. Rosaline, can you also unmute yourself?
How's that?
There you go.
Hi.
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
I'm terribly sorry. I was watching and fascinated by your photographs, but then was distracted for some time, and I came back to find that I was inadvertently asking a question. I do beg your pardon. I'm so sorry. I didn't have a question, and I'm sorry I've taken your time, but just wanted to tell you. It was fascinating to see the photos of the sisters. I attended Immaculata High School and Mary Grove College. And of course, I was watching for any sisters that I could recognize.
Well, there's several photos about Immaculata in my book. My husband's 4 sisters went to Immaculata. Immaculata contributed so many women who entered the congregation and became IHM sisters. And it was just a terrific, terrific school for so many people, and so many of those women accomplished so much. One of, if you remember, Eleanor Jositis, who helped found Focus Hope in Detroit, she had attended Immaculata High School, and there I know a few women from my era who became artists and musicians of some renown, who attended Immaculata High School. And I'm actually the director of the Steppenwolf Theater, and she passed away 2 years ago, was Martha Levy. She graduated from Immaculata High School, and she was an actress, and in running the Steppenwolf Theater in Chicago, she received Tonys. She received Tony Awards for some of the productions they put on.
I see. I graduated in '59 from Immaculata and '63 from Mary Grove.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, and I could do a book on Mary Grove. I could do a book on Mary Grove. There's about a dozen pictures in the book about Mary Grove. I could do a book on Immaculata. I could do a book on St. Mary Academy, because so much the archives at the Mother House are just rich with so many.
You see, I live near Terre Haute, Indiana now, and I'm associated with the Sisters of Providence of St. Mary of the Woods. And so when I left Detroit and moved here, it was wonderful to be able to not transfer allegiance, but to be able to fill a gap after 8 years of women's education, to be able to find the sisters here and the college and make a connection. May I ask, you said your husband's name is
Deal.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's like, let's make a deal.
Oh,
I mean,
in spelling.
But he teaches at U of D High School. He went to U of D High School, and he teaches Spanish there now.
Is that right?
Yes, and he's the golf coach also.
Oh, so the U of D High School is still in existence. You see, I've been gone so long.
Well, one of the reasons I wrote the book I did on Detroit Jesu Catholic Church and School. Detroit Jesu is one of 4 Catholic schools, one of 4 Catholic elementary schools still open in Detroit. And when I was a baby boomer going to Catholic school in Detroit, there was 108 Catholic elementary schools in Detroit. So There's only 4 now. And with that book I wrote on Jesu, I helped raise more than $11,000 for the school.
Wow. One of my few joys that is being able to relate to Detroit and my schooling here, living in Terre Haute, Indiana, was an occasion one night at, if you will, a New Year's Eve party at a German club, when from the far of the table, my husband yelled to me, "This man went to U of D High School." And I don't think at that point I could have been able to sing the Immaculata High School song, but I knew the U of D High School fight song after all those football games I'd
Right.
gone to. And so this man, Milton Brinza, and I stood together and sang the U of D fight song.
Oh my goodness.
It was, and that story came back to me recently because a good friend of mine, a sister at St. Mary's, now in charge of the columbarium.
Oh my
And
goodness.
the
Yeah.
ashes of this gentleman were brought to be buried, and she knew nothing of him. And when she told me, and I recognized the name, and I told her the story, she related that story to his
Yeah.
family when they buried his ashes. And so it was a connection, and just
Yeah.
one of
It
the
was a
small
moment.
things.
It's a
Make
full
something
circle moment.
personal.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Thanks for your question. Let's go on to the next one. Rosalie, can you try again? Okay. Can you try to unmute yourself? There you go. Rosalie, I'm afraid that your microphone might not be enabled. I'm going to go on to the next question. Bridget?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Is that Bridget O'Brien Pantaleo's voice? I
That
hear?
would be the same one.
And I haven't heard this voice in decades, but it's good to.
I was a schoolmate of Patricia's, but then Patty. And I saw her Facebook tonight and decided to join the Zoom and watch her presentation. And I just wanted to say, you did a great job.
Thank you.
And what a great book. And I read your other books, so.
Thanks. And Bridget, you went to Epiphany grade school, didn't you? And you had IHMs at
I
Epiphany.
did. I had, yeah, Sister Christopher and Sister Mary Justice and Sister Philothea
Oh my
and
goodness.
Sister Marie Sweeney. Marie Sweeney, I stayed in contact with her until she passed away about 15 years ago, 10 years ago, I think. So we went to Rosary together, Patty and I, and we
Right.
still have girlfriends that we are still friends with. And Patty, I wanted to let you know that I'm just so proud of you over these so many
Bridget,
years.
thank you. Thank you so much.
And I'm calling you from Punta Gorda, Florida.
Yes. Well,
So
thank you
anyway.
so very, very much. Enjoy the day. And
All right,
the
thanks.
season.
All
Thank
right,
you.
Patty. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
David, if you could unmute, there you go.
I did. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't have a question. I just wanted to relate an incident. I went to St. Raymond's Catholic. We had IHM nuns, and in 7th grade, I had done some things that I'm not proud of, but I was having to go to the convent every weekend for a month.
Oh my goodness.
And one of the times I was there, I was working on my homework, and this little tiny nun came in with a buffer, and she started buffing the floor. And now I'm a big strapping 7th grader. I said, "Sister, would you like me to do that?" And she said, "Oh, sure, okay." So I grabbed a hold of the thing, bam, into the side, bam, into the other side. She didn't tell me how it works. But from that point on, I gave the nuns a wide berth. I said, "My God, they're the strongest things in the world."
That's right. That's right.
So
Well, thank you so much for that.
And my education was so good that a lot of the things that I learned in grade school, I used in college. So it was
Wow.
IHM were very good teachers.
Quite the testament.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mary?
Yes, sister. Patricia, I was wondering when you were doing your research, if you found out any information about the flag that is in the museum that the nuns helped embroidered for the Civil War.
Oh boy. No, and I should have. I'm listening to you now. I wished I had. No, I don't. I can't tell you that story so much, but there's so much history there, and I mean, I still see all these photos and learn things. I'm like, oh, I wish I'd had that in the book. I wish I'd had that in the book, you know. And but do you know more about it? Can you tell us about it?
Well, I probably will defer to Andy or JJ on that, as they are the people the directors of the museum. They could probably give the best story on that.
Oh,
Wow.
thanks, Mary, for putting me on the spot. I really appreciate that. So of course, we are open for visitation, and if you're in the area, we invite you to come up. Up on the second floor is one of the battle flags in our collection, and it was from the Civil War. And the local history is it was partly made by using the first sewing machine in the city of Monroe, but it was also made by I believe the students, and I believe possibly some of the sisters as well.
Wow.
And it is on prominent display up on the second floor. And you can probably, though I don't think you should, because I think you should see it in person, but you can probably Google it and see a picture of it online. It's quite an impressive item that we have.
Absolutely. I will make that a point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Barb, please go ahead. And you need to unmute yourself.
Okay, now is it all right?
Yes.
Okay,
Beth.
sorry I tuned in late and I wanted to know if this was going to be available later to view as a video.
Eventually, we're still working on how to get the videos uploaded, but I believe they'll be on YouTube at some point.
Wow.
So if you check our website in the next few months, again, we're still trying to learn it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Chargot, I'm not sure.
IHM associate Pat Shargett, I believe.
Chargot, okay.
Yeah.
So I'm the one in the picture. Patty is my friend. And I just wanted to say one thing. I went to Marygrove, class of 71. And my mother and her three sisters all graduated from the college in the 40s. And I've got this wonderful picture of the four of them at this garden party on campus. At the time, this picture was ran in the Detroit Free Press decades before I worked there. And the caption said that at that time, no family had sent more daughters to Marygrove. However, later, some families sent 5 or 6 daughters. So my family no longer holds that title. But what I really wanted to tell you was that for one of my early class reunions, maybe it was like 5 years or 10 years. This is so long ago. I'm 71 years old, so it's a long time ago. I'm at this college reunion, and there are about 40 of us who came in from different states to attend it. We're at this table, we had a dinner, and we started talking about, we just had this instinct that we had, even though we hadn't seen each other in so long, we had this strong feeling that we had something really important in common, and we were trying to figure out what it was. Because, you know, we all had different lives, different careers. I wasn't married at the time. A lot of my classmates were married with kids. And we finally figured it out. We figured out that we all were committed to service. And it's funny, we know we got that from the IHMs. And I don't even think they used the word, they weren't preaching to us about it. I don't know what those
Right.
nuns did to us. All I know is that we are all women of service to, to the best of our abilities. We try to be of service to others, our families, our friends, anyone really. And we got that from the IHMs, and that is the very best gift I've ever gotten from anyone, is that quality instilled in my soul. So that's why I became an associate, because I just think they're wonderful.
They are. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
I didn't know that about your mom and her sisters. So if I do a book on Mary Grove, that photo will go in.
Yeah, I've got the photo
All right.
handy.
Okay.
Rosalie, you want to try one more time? Yeah. I'm sorry, we still can't hear you. I'm sure that there's a way to ask Patricia a question if possible. Do you have an email that they could send to you?
To me, yes. Yeah. Hi there. And if you're listening, you can send it to, all right. It's P, and then my last name, PMON, T as in Tom, E, M as in Mary, URRI books. So it's all one word, P Montemurri books @gmail.com.